Okay.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to the webinar PDFA for Scanned Documents of the PDFA Competence Center today. At the moment we have around 50% of the registered attendees online, so I suggest we wait for another short 2 minutes and then we start the broadcast. Thanks, and talk to you in 2 minutes. So once again, welcome to the webinar PDFA for Scanned Documents of the PDFA Competence Center. We'll start the broadcast now. Today's webinar is presented by LuraTech, the expert for document conversion solutions. My name is Carsten Heiermann. I'm the managing director of LuraTech. And for the practical presentation part we have foreseen for today's webinar, LuraTech CTO Armin Ortmann is also here online. Hi, Armin.
Hello, good morning to you all.
Before we start, I have some general information for you, some technical information on the webinar. Questions during the webinar can be sent by the text chat window that you will all have on your screen. We try to answer those questions during the session, but it might get too much. But any question you send in there will be answered at least by email after the webinar during the next some days. So please feel free to send in as many questions as you want for the webinar topics. At the end of the webinar, a questionnaire will pop up. This is a short form with 5 questions, and we kindly ask you to fill in the 5 questions there to help us to further improve our service. The questionnaire also has additional room to store questions that come up after the webinar, so also there is a chance for you to ask additional questions and send it in to us, and also these questions will be answered during the next some days by email to you. The webinar will be recorded. Please visit PDFA Competence Center's website, www.pdfa.org, for download information of the webinar recording during the next some days. You'll also find information on upcoming webinars of the PDFA Competence Center's series of webinars on PDFA on the website www.pdfa.org during the next time. So please feel free to go back there and visit PDFA Competence Center's webinar to find out more on PDFA and on the webinar. Today, our special topic in the series of PDFA webinars is converting scanned documents into PDFA. And we should immediately start now with the presentation. Armin, would you help me to switch to the next slide? Yes, before we go in the details on what helps on scanned documents or what advantages on scanned documents PDFA can give you all, we should shortly talk about what's up to date, up till present, what's normal to do with scanned documents. And you might all know that a lot of the documents that are scanned in are stored in archives for archiving purposes, for workflow purposes, and long-term archiving purposes in TIFF Group 4 compression. This is for all documents that are scanned in, and once they are scanned in, get black and white. The other alternative is to, if you like to scan in your documents and preserve them in color, so that they look as the original documents looked before, there's not a lot of alternatives to the JPEG format, JPEG imaging format, imaging compression format. There are other formats that are used not that often, like PNG and bitmaps and other raster graphic formats, but they all together have one common denominator, and that's they are raster graphics compression formats, not really designed to handle documents. Often there are special version formats. You might say that my color documents are in TIFF format, and yes, that's possible. Every page inside those multi-page TIFF documents is then again once more compressed with a JPEG, and also this has the same disadvantages as JPEG has. And talking about disadvantages of the existing solutions for storing scanned documents in electronic form, these formats are already at least two, if not more, that you need to just store your scanned documents in your long-term archive. Thinking about digital born documents, that is Office formats and other formats that are not coming from paper but directly digitally born, you have a lot more formats in your long-term archive. What is the problem? I return to that problem later. With TIFF Group 4 and black and white scanning, you for sure have a loss in information compared to your original paper document. What is a great disadvantage? Think about an example. You have a cabling plan in some electric documentation of a power plant or whatever, and the cabling plan says the red and the green and something cable on that graphics there. Scanning in black and white, you lose all that information, and this cabling plan is simply worthless. So there is definitely loss of information working with the good old TIFF Group 4 black and white compression with scanned documents. With JPEG, you can for sure introduce the color, but there's a trade-off. You, on the one hand, might have a bad image quality once the files are an acceptable file size. And if you really take a look at the image quality first, so that you have good images in your long-term archive, you really get huge file sizes. That's the trade-off. This is an either-or decision that you can do. There's no real optimal situation where you can have good quality and at the same point smaller file size that are acceptable in size. Another issue around all these formats, the two formats, at least two formats for scanned documents and all the other formats around digital born documents, is that there is no standardized way to store metadata, to connect that metadata with those files and store them together in one file. Of course, you can add metadata to a TIFF group, TIFF header. That's something that you can do. Most of that is proprietary extensions that is not interoperable with other formats and so on, and with other systems and so on. Of course, you can store inside JPEG something like IPTC metadata or EXIF or whatever. But you already see that these two are not really working together, and thinking about storing metadata in Office or whatever is simply not compatible, not interoperable, and you can't apply one metadata schema for all your documents that you need to archive in your company. So this is a great disadvantages of all the existing formats. And going back to the scanned documents, JPEGs or TIFF as files are absolutely not full text searchable. There is ways to store full text information inside document management systems or ECM, Enterprise Content Management System, to simulate a full text searchability once or as long as the documents are still inside the enterprise content management system. But once you take a document out there, send it to your customer or whomever, the full text searchability is definitely lost, and you can't flip or can't easily find a certain paragraph or whatever in a long multi-page document anymore. And you just have to go through the whole document to find the point you're looking for. Great disadvantages. Next slide, please. Yeah, talking about image quality versus file size, and the image loss here is a visual representation of what I told you before in theory. On the left side you see what we would call the raw data that comes out of a scanner or of a scanning device or whatever. In TIFF or bitmap or whatever, this is an uncompressed document. The file size for a letter size or a DIN A4 a page in 300 dpi in full color is approximately 25 megabytes, which is very good image quality for sure, but not acceptable at all in file size. Nobody can really afford to store all his mass-wise documentation or paperwork in electronic form when it is 25 megabytes per page. That's really too much. With JPEG, you see in the middle there, you might be able to get to acceptable file sizes somehow. But as I said before, once the file sizes are acceptable, small enough, you see those artifacts, as we call that, those distortions there, especially around the real net data that is in there, the real data that you need, the characters, the paragraphs, whatever, lines and tables and so on. And you see that there's color artifacts, there's just wrong colors in there, and also the edges of certain characters get blurred and unsharp. What is a real problem if you think about trying to recognize those characters later with an OCR to make it full text searchable or something? That's a real problem. And with TIFF group 4 on the right side, you absolutely might see the loss in information, in this case the color of course, but it has acceptable file size, and this is the only reason why people do that. So over the years, it was the only alternative years ago to handle those mass-wise documents that you have to scan in and archive. But you see the disadvantages here. Next slide, please. Yeah, an alternative solution to those introduced scanned documents format might be PDF. Already over years, available since '93 is the first version of PDF out there in the market. It's a widely used format. Everybody has, almost everybody, or might even be everybody, has a PDF reader on his computer, on his desk. So this is a document format that you can really widely and ubiquitously use on all computers, and it has an advantage. You might want to use it to just unify the number of file formats or the file formats you have to store in your long-term archive. You can convert scanned documents by simple image to PDF solutions into PDF files, and you can convert, of course, everybody has done that before, Office files and other formats into PDF, and this might be a chance to really drill down the number of different file formats you need in your long-term archive, the number of different file formats you need to maintain reading and viewing capabilities over the years think about, for example, construction documents or whatever it is. All these documents have periods where you need to store them starting from 10 years going up to 100 years or even longer. And the real challenge now is to store something today and be sure that you have a reader available on a system. You really can't give any prediction on what technology that might be in 50 years in the future, and really keep those files readable. So thinking again about the zoo of archiving formats, the different archiving formats you have in your long-term archive, you have a real challenge to maintain viewing capabilities for all those. With PDF, you might be able to convert them all in nearly only one long-term archiving format, and you only have the much simpler challenge to keep PDF reading capabilities over the years. Another advantage of PDF that you have as a disadvantage is with other scanned document formats is you can, of course, add full text to those files. Those scanned documents converted to PDF, when applying an OCR to that, they are definitely full text searchable. You can send those files to a supplier or a customer, and he has the chance to just search through the PDF file, which is a great advantage because it's a common way that is interoperable to everybody that you can do those full text search. And PDF has the chance to give you advanced compression schemes. We return to those compression schemes later, which is a great chance to even get your data smaller or more easy to store and retrieve, of course. With the metadata, it's the same thing. PDF has standardized ways or has common ways to store metadata. So one conclusion could be PDF has none of the disadvantages of the legacy formats I introduced to you before. So that could be a solution. Now, we are talking about PDFA today, and PDFA is only a PDFA file is only PDFA compliant when it's compliant to PDF. That's a good thing to note because that, on the other hand, says if you have PDF reading capability, you also have, with the same tool or whatever, have PDFA reading capability. It's just the same thing. Just PDFA says how to use PDF securely for long-term archiving. So PDFA is a description on what features are allowed from PDF, what features are not allowed to use from PDF because they are critical for long-term archiving, and some other rules are applied to use a PDF secure for long-term archiving. And with that said, if the decision for PDF as an archiving format is made, why not use PDFA with all its advantages over PDF in terms of being secure for long-term archiving and with all the advantages and all the PDF has, as I introduced before. Next slide, please. There will be webinars in this series of webinars introducing all the basics, the 101 of PDFA, and I'm going to skip over that here and just introduce it very quickly as a concept. As I said before, PDFA is a rule on how to use PDF securely for long-term archiving, and the goals of PDFA are to maintain the visual representation of today archived documents over the long term that you have to store them, and it's an archiving format for static content like invoices and anything else you have in your long-term archiving, but it's not covering things like video and so on. That's something for the future. It has this really consistent handling of metadata in there. It has also, in addition, an option to maintain the structure and the semantic meaning of content inside there. This is not really applicable for scanned documents, as we talk about that today. I also would say that this is part of later webinars in this series here. It guarantees you an easy access to the content. That's one of the major goals of PDFA, so that it's easy to maintain viewing capability over the years. And it has also some restrictions and some additional rules that you need to apply to PDFs to be PDFA compliant. This is, of course, done by tools and not by you personally that are the tools that are PDFA compliant. Okay, I keep the 101 to another webinar, and we go on with the scanned documents. Armin, please give me the next slide here. Talking about the advantages now of PDFA is talking about advantages of PDF for sure, but with PDFA, first time you have an internationally standardized, ISO standard compliant, long-term archiving format that gives you all the benefits that PDF has. For example, on this page you see the advantages of applying OCR, of having a full text searchability. I introduced it before a little bit. The idea is really to have full text search also outside your document management system. In this example here, this is a construction document that has 22 pages in here, and somebody searched for a specific German terms in there. You can see on the image there, and PDF and PDF readers have the capability of highlighting the hit inside a hit list and in the document, so that you have really an easy way to access the content, even if it is a long multi-page document that is outside your document management system. I call it after a download in a digital library, or after having sent a document to customers, suppliers, or lawyers. This is the OCR, full text searchability advantage, that you can introduce by using PDFA instead of TIFF Group 4 or JPEG. Next slide, please. Armin, next slide, please. Thank you. Another advantage I introduced you before is again kind of a PDF advantage, but again the story is the same. It is in ISO compliant way for long-term archiving, now available with PDFA. It is all about compression schemes. For black and white documents, as you can see here, TIFF Group 4 is not the final answer in terms of file size and quality. You can, inside PDF or PDFA, you can use JPEG2. Your document conversion solution will apply JPEG2 compression to black and white content, maybe automatically. And you see that using PDFA does not really mean for scanned documents that the files get bigger. It's just the opposite way. Fax Group 4 file, as an example, is the same example as before, mentioned here on the, or showed here on the left side of the samples here, and you can see by the sizes in the latest row here, in the lower row here, that you can go down to approximately like 50% of the file size of a Fax Group 4 document when you use PDFA. So this is a great advantage even for just black and white stored documents, if you like to do that any longer. If you do not like to do that any longer and you want to work in color, there's also a solution with an enhanced compression scheme. I mean, next slide, please. Known from JPEG 2000, but as a principle also available in PDF or PDFA, you can apply so-called MRC, mixed raster content compression, to your color scanned documents. Scan documents in color. The basic idea of that is to split color scanned documents into 3 layers before compressing it. You can see that here in the graphic, and not compressing it with a JPEG or JPEG 2000 as a whole, as an image, because the statistical properties or the statistical data of regions of that documents are really different. You see in the middle layer here, the so-called mask or text and graphic shapes layer, you see that there is the black and white text information stored. This is really about sharp edges. This is really the net data that you have to preserve in your compressed document, in your stored document, and therefore this is separated in a layer. And this can be compressed really good with TIFF Group 4 or with JPEG2 I just introduced a second before. What can be good compressed with TIFF Group 4 or JPEG2 is the background here. It's the photorealistic images that might be the yellowish background of an old document, or a photo, or whatever it is, a company logo or whatever it is, that goes into the background here as a separate layer, as a separate image, and of course can be compressed very well with JPEG. And so can the foreground image that stores the information what color the black and white text in the mask layer has had before. So this is the third layer, store the color information of a text. These 3 layers are, from their statistical properties, are super prepared to be highly compressed with existing compression schemes as JPEG and JPEG2 and so on. And the result is one PDFA file, when you frame a PDFA around that 3 layers here, one PDFA file that is really highly compressed and has a very good image quality, as we can see on the next slide. Yeah, again, this is the sample of from the very beginning of our presentation here today, and you see again the 25 megabyte around that uncompressed original raw data. You see the TIFF file here with an acceptable file size. You see the distorted, blurred JPEG file with kind of acceptable file size, and on the right side, I can't see. Maybe it's a refresh problem. Armin, can you go back a slide and force again? Oh yeah, here it is. Yeah. Now the refresh is there for me too. Thanks. And on the right side, you see the PDFA file that has real acceptable file size and a very good image quality with sharp, especially characters and everything else. So applying mixed raster content compression can help you to use color scanning now in your company if you like to. The rule of thumb I introduce to my customers or my listeners here, the auditorium, I want to give you is if you work in black and white, PDFA enhanced compression schemes can give you half of the file size as you are used to with TIFF Group 4. If you work in full color, the full color just needs the same amount of storage, the same file size as you are used to spend for the same document in TIFF Group 4 black and white only. So this is a great advantage that you can apply those color schemes. One more slide before we go into the practical presentation of all that, so that you also believe me what I'm telling you here, is about the conversion of scanned documents, about the process that you can apply. And the graphics on the upper side of this slide here shows you obviously that everything starts with paper, and there will be a scanning device, and the scanning device outputs TIFF, JPEGs, and PDFs, and whatever you output today. And this is a very important information. Using PDFA doesn't mean that you have to exchange anything that you already have. You can still use your same scanners, the same scanning software that output the same TIFFs or JPEGs to a hard drive. But just they do not longer directly output it to network, workflow, software, storage, ECM or DMS system, but they output to an intermediate, I'd say, in the middle device or a computer or software like the LuraDocument PDF compressor we will have a look at in a second. This one picks up all the existing file formats and converts them to PDFA, and this can be done in batch conversion, can be done, as I say, unattended. It can be run on a computer where nobody sits in front of, so it can be fully automated. The good news really is you do not need to change your existing systems. You just cut the flow of your documents through your capture workflow at some point, and there at this point you introduce something like the LuraDocument PDF compressor which automatically does all the conversion jobs for you and does additional things like applying OCR for full text searchability, and does additional things like merging single pages document to multi-page PDFA documents and so on, and then it goes to the existing systems again, like your network, your workflow, or your storage system. Next slide, please. Yeah, let's have a look at that. Armin will show us now what I introduced you verbally until now.
Okay,
Armin.
so I have basically prepared a folder with a few examples. So we do have 3 bitonal or black and white documents here. Please excuse that these are basically in German, but I think you can easily see the structure of the documents. These are some scanned forms, and this one is basically an invoice from a huge supermarket. And I also have a few color documents here. This one is already named multi-page because it consists of 2 pages, and this one is also just a scanned invoice from a supplier. So you see stamps in here, you see handwritten marks here on the margin, and so on and so forth. Lots of colors here. So let's maybe start with the color folder, and basically just converting these TIFF images to PDFA is about as simple as this. I drag the folder in here. I hope you can see this through the presentation, simply by dragging and dropping, and then by editing basically just the, let's give it a name, and basically just adding the encoder compatibility here, which by standard is PDF Adobe Reader 6.0, which is PDF 1.7, I think. I'm changing this to PDFA, and that's about all it takes. The other properties such as the input directory. The output will go right next to the input, and basically for every input document I have here, whether it's a one-page document or a two-page document, a corresponding PDF document will be created. So I simply hit start here. You can see it starts right away, and it processes the two documents independently. I have a dual core system here, so two processes get launched, and you directly see the results right here. And I can also directly go and open them in the absolutely standard Adobe Reader, and you hardly see anything at first glance, but of course they have been converted, they have been compressed, and you can see this here. If you go to the details page, you can then see that from the original uncompressed size, they have been compressed down to considerably less than 100 kilobytes per page. Of course, these are totally uncompressed. They are 300 dpi. Lots of scanners can produce compressed LZW, TIFF, for example, and get you to sizes around 1 to 3 megabytes per page. But what we are talking about here is something such as 30 or 50 kilobytes per page, and that's the output result. So you see the text is still quite legible. Most of the degradation through the compression occurs in the background of the document. Okay, that's for color, but this also works, of course, for bitonal images, where here I have the 3 bitonal or black and white or grayscale images. If you look at the details, this one is the original uncompressed size, this is LZW compressed, and this one is already FAX G4 compressed. So this is also already compressed pretty strongly, but still, let's see what we can do. And we were also talking about batch processing. Of course, dragging and dropping a folder in here is quite nice, but what you usually want to do in some industrial environment, or at least in a high-performance environment, is run this in the background, run it unattendedly, and simply have some semi-automatic way to convert documents without users dragging and dropping things and opening the GUI and setting properties and stuff like that. So I will drag this folder, which is basically empty. It just contains a subfolder. I will drag it in here, maybe also give it a name for a distinction. And of course, once again, I have to set this to PDF-A. And now I will set this folder to be a so-called hot folder or watched folder. I will basically specify that it is to be checked every 10 seconds for incoming content. So whenever a new document appears in this folder, the PDF compressor will start to convert it if it conforms to one of these input file formats which are specified here. I could also go ahead and merge everything within a folder into a single PDF document. I could include subfolders. I won't do this for now because it will just make things more complicated. And but I will set a few options here. I will specify input files to be moved. Into this. Sorry, this is a bit awkward right now. And upon error, I will also move files. This is basically to ensure that the PDF compressor does not run over the same documents over and over and over again, but that it basically just moves things out of the way. Of course, we shouldn't run into any errors here, but basically upon success, the things would be moved back into this folder. Also, as I've also specified, we are using PDF-A compression, and as an extra, some of you have also already asked about it, I will apply some OCR. So let's see what the OCR will do to these documents. And now I will start the compression here, or basically I'll start this watched folder. So it just now says monitoring, but there is no content there yet. I will provide it now with some content simply by copying these files in here. This could, of course, be something that in your enterprise workflow could be done by some other capture workflow management, by some enterprise content management system, or some other surrounding system, SAP, whatever. So we're basically seeing the files in here, and this is it takes a few moments. Some of the delay is of course due to the OCR. This tends to slow things down a bit, but within a few seconds we should basically see the results. So we have the results here. You see all of them are around 30 to 40 kilobytes per page, where one could basically, as a rule of thumb, for these kinds of documents, you will have a one-digit number of kilobytes for the OCR. So somewhere around 5, 6, 7, 8 kilobytes per page are due to the OCR results being embedded here. And you see that even the fax G4 compressed original, this original here, has been considerably reduced. The result is only some 35 kilobytes, where the original was some 60 kilobytes. And let's see what the results look like. You see, still at 100%, these results are very legible, they're quite clear, and you can, due to the full text search, you can now mark text in here. You can copy it and paste it, or you can look for terms in here, as you could do in any regular PDF document. Okay, so much for that. For the OCR and for everything else, of course, there's lots of further options available. You can merge documents, you can split them by certain rules, you can have elaborate rules for headers and footers to be inserted, and so on and so forth. I won't go into that much detail here. Just one more thing to demonstrate you. This is an example of how the MRC compression actually works. I have pre-created this one, and it's actually not a PDF-A because I want to be able to show you these layers, and that's not allowed in the PDF-A standard. But concerning the contents and the technique used, this is just about equal to what one of our MRC compressed PDF-As would look like or would contain. And if you manipulate the layers here, you basically see the effects of the layering. This is the background layer, and I can drop it out or put it back in, and you see these background patterns which are colored but with low contrast. They are put in the background. They are compressed differently, whereas this text remains crisp and clear, and it also retains its color because the color of the text is still another layer. So this basically are the effects, or these are the visible results of the MRC compression, and this is of course due to the segmentation algorithm that we use for analyzing these documents and then compressing them in a very sophisticated fashion. Okay, Carsten, did I miss anything? Anything else we need to point out?
Thank you, Armin. Thanks a lot for that presentation. If you don't mind, switch back to the PowerPoint slides. And
of course, I don't mind at all. So, but we have to move forward to the right place.
Yeah. So, and yeah, that brings me, or that leads me to the final question I would like to introduce to you all today. PDFA, it looks like this is a real cool technology that has a lot of advantages for long-term archiving in several aspects. And the basic question is, if you put your PDFA documents to an archiving format for that, if you put your scanned documents to PDFA as a long-term archiving format, is this gone the next year, or does it really apply for the next some 10, 20, 50 years, whatever your period of maintaining your documents in your long-term archive are? So is it a hype, as everybody talks about that, or is it a future archiving format? And I would like to introduce you to some projects and give you some hints on who is already doing that, in what applications, and with what amounts of documents, and you might be able to find out whether it's a hype or a future archiving format yourself then with those examples. Armin, next slide, please. First of all, I want to introduce you to two projects. These are customer case studies of LuraTech, so we can talk about that open. It's also published. There's a German state bank called Heiermann, Hessische Landesbank Thüringen, for those of you who know. And I want to introduce you to their project because it's really interesting also for those of you who think about starting to use PDFA. This project has had two major steps so far. The first step was that the bank started to scan in specific documents that are in a special application called international checks. Yeah, this bank still cashes in international checks and so on, and this is a specific project that is not related to the main workflows and the real core business of that bank. So it was an easy project to try to collect experience around using PDFA, around how to integrate PDFA to workflows and so on. In the meantime, the project has grown, and in the meantime, the core competency of the bank is definitely around credit files and everything else, and the credit files, a digital mailroom is set up for credit files, and all those incoming daily mail is today scanned and converted to PDFA. Another thing I want to introduce you regarding this project is that the used tools inside that bank is what you all know. It's the daily tools that you all know. Just in addition, there is the LuraTech PDF compressor. Everything else is pretty standard, like COFAC, Instant Capture, like an EMC Centera archiving hardware, like a special application that is the application of a bank, but that could also be an application of any other industry. So nothing has changed really, just the document flow has been separated at some point, and the LuraDocument PDF compressor was inserted there. Results of those projects is now the bank has full color scans in their electronic archive. This is an advantage because the task-based worker in that bank now have a lot easier access to those documents. They can understand it better, just as the documents look like their paper originals. They have high compressed PDFA files in their storage system that saves a lot of storage, but also retrieval time and network bandwidth. All the credit files are full text searchable, which is a great advantage as they are multi-page and long. Not as a side effect, but as a main effect, all those credit files are now ready for long-term archiving. Their readability over the years is now secured by applying PDFA to those documents. And as an outlook, what happens next is this is just a first step on the way to have just a single archiving format in that bank here. Next slide, please. Another project I want to introduce you has almost the same results, but it is a project inside a city, so it's a governmental project. This city has even a 3-steps plan. The first step was, again, a smaller, simpler project to start with, convert paper of resident registration to PDFA, paper residence registration documents to PDFA. This is already years ago now, and even the second step of the project, converting construction files, which are a lot more complex files, to PDFA, is done in the meantime. And the third, as a plan, what happens next is again use PDFA for all digital files. With the construction files, something special is to mention here. What the city found out here, and what is also published as a customer case study, is that PDFA is suitable on the one hand for mass-wise conversion of documents that are kind of smaller, like letter size or DIN A4 or even smaller, but also on the other hand for those large documents that sit in construction documents like technical drawings and everything else that can have several hundred megabytes in raw data. So it's really suitable for almost any kind of static content that is in your files. High compressed PDFA files again reduce storage costs and bandwidth needs. Long-term readability of all those files is secured by using PDFA, and the files are now available quickly. That is a general advantage of digitization for daily research. And research means they can search through the files now as they are containing the full text by applying an OCR during production of those files. Next slide, please. On the last slide here, I want to show you other industries using PDFA. Again, the question is hype or archiving format of the future. These customers here are just the LuraTech reference customers. So there's a lot more customers out there already using PDFA, sometimes since years now. Just these some reference customers here are several billion pages that are already archived and have to be preserved between like 10 years or even more than 100 years. And on the lower right side, you see libraries who want to store those files simply forever. So there are already really several billion pages out there that have to be maintained now for decades or hundreds of years now, and this gives you a hint that the PDFA format, what is an ISO standard that is published forever without any kind of going back and potentially making it void or whatever. So this is really something that will maintain over the years, will be there over the years, and as industries you see on the lower left side, on the higher left side, upper left side, there are a certain number of banks. There are insurance company on the middle left side. There are highly regulated industry customers coming from the energy industry and so on the right side, on the lower left side. On the higher right side, there are more companies that have construction documents for power plants, for planes, for ships, for automotive, and so on. And on the lower right side, you see that also a great application area, a big application area, are the libraries and state archives and so on. So for me, question, is it a hype or an archiving format of the future, might be answered with just these slides here and thinking about who has to store what for how long. Okay, next slide, please, which is the last one. I want to say thank you to all of you. It's 11:45 now, so we are exactly on time. I would like to, I'd like you all to fill out the questionnaire that pops up once you are leaving the webinar to help improve our service, and also to give us your additional questions that you might have. And if you like PDFA, if you like the idea and the concept we showed you today and want to check out yourself, just send me an email, c.heiermann@luratech.com. You see the email there on the lower side of the page, and I would be glad to send you more information or demonstration software for your own testing. Thanks a lot, and see you next time in the next webinar of the PDFA Competence Center.